everyone, it's Book of Katherine, and I just wanted to do, I always say that, I just wanted to do, and then it ends up being 20-30 minutes long. Oh well. So anyway, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about what I was thinking about today. So our group has been watching two very different people, I realized, in like the last 24 hours. And I realized you guys are doing it too. You're watching two very different, I know that's what you do. And it's something that confirmation bias and the media tells us that we don't do. They say everything on the internet. I know I published a little while ago, I did some research for you, and confirmation bias at 25 years ago when the internet was born and the CIA and everyone, they did all the funding and all the UN and all the dictatorships and stuff, they put all this money into Google and all the search engines. That's the very first thing they funded, and they put it all in. And then when they did all the search engines and all the search pages, what they did is they uploaded all of it, and when they debuted the internet, the very first thing the internet did is infiltrate something called confirmation bias. And what confirmation bias does is that when you go on there, anything that you want or like or think or whatever, the entire internet, whether you like it or not, it's going to send you in that direction. So if you happen to like pretty pink dresses, it's going to completely send you towards pretty pink dresses. If you happen to live in a certain area, if you live in New York, it's going to completely send you towards New York. If you notice on Twitter, you are not going to be allowed to see what's going on in France in Twitter, no matter what you want. You can't go in Denmark and see what's happening in Denmark. As much as it say it's a free speech platform, you don't get to go in Italy and see what's happening in Italy. No way, no how, not in China. You can try it. You only get to see what's happening in New York. That's it. And you get to see the trends they tell you is actually happening. No, they make you stay in this one little world, and it's like a freeway, and they stick you. The internet is a freeway, and they stick you on this freeway, and they make you stay on that freeway. Not only that, but confirmation bias, it constantly sticks you in this world where then they take you on their own confirmation bias. So you'll see it on Google. It's getting worse and worse, where if you go hunt to Google and you look up a certain thing, it only brings up certain search results. So it gives you its own confirmation bias. And they've been doing that since the beginning. So if you look up a certain subject area, they don't give you all the results that are actually available. They give you the results that they want you to find. So if they think a certain way on a certain subject, they're like, here, we're going to send you this way on a certain subject. So if you look up global warming, they're not going to give you what the global physicists are saying. They're going to say what the 97% are saying, which it turns out, if you actually read the paper on the 97%, it turns out that no, 97%, if you look up those actual papers, guess what? 50% of them, 50% of those papers didn't even make a claim on global warming. They actually made no statement whatsoever on global warming. And of the 50% that did, half those didn't even say that global warming was occurring. Like, if you actually go into the abstract of that paper, which is darn near impossible to find, and they do that on purpose. So this whole 97% of scientists say, once you dig a little bit into it, but that's not what they want you to find. But once you go outside of that sphere of any of those papers or whatever, you're not going to find it on the internet. But if you go outside of that into other scientists who are off of the payroll or whatever, and you go into the actual data, you find out that the hottest year on record was 1998, and the globe's been cooling since then. Not getting warmer, and the warm was 1 degree, less than 1 degree, and so we're getting into this colder age and this whole 9 yards. So anyway, when you get off of the confirmation bias track, what I wanted to say is, if you think about what we're watching, we are watching this thing of, we're watching Jonathan Van Ness, who I am in love with. I am absolutely in love with. He did this amazing thing on Saturday. It was right after I released the Clean the GOP video, which is right here, where I talked about 90% of political views are being called conservative, which are ridiculous. Basically, if you're not a communist and you don't think you should be shot if you don't think like a communist, which is the way things were in Lenin's day. If you didn't think like a communist, you were called a bigot. You were called, a racist. You were called absolutely all of those things. If you did not think red and like Lenin, if you did not actually say everything Lenin said when Lenin said it, you were shot and put in a gulag by the trainful. You were loaded up, and millions died underneath Lenin. And the same thing goes in China. When China speaks and they actually change the rhetoric, if you don't go with that rhetoric, you're rounded up and you're killed, and they still have concentration camps to this day. That's what happens with the left. But if you are not a communist, if you are not within that rhetoric, the other 90% of political beliefs, they just label you one of those words. They just stamp you with this horrible thing. But the thing is underneath that huge umbrella, there's liberals, there's classical liberals, there's all these different things. There's conservatives, then there's moderates, there's people who don't think that they have a political party whatsoever, but they do want free speech. There are people who are just homeless and they're like, leave me alone. And now they're making like living in your car, like that's not allowed or whatever. Like it's this whole thing. And it's like, what happened to the land of the free? What happened to the home of the brave? You know what I mean? So anyway, so we're really enjoying Jonathan Van Ness. He left right after I did that video the next day. He said this amazing thing. Well, he said something on his Twitter. He said that, you know, not all Republicans are racist, which is true. And it's an outrageous statement. Of course, the hate networks went to task. Like the hate networks went to task. And it is, you know, 30% of all actual profiles on Twitter are fake. They're not even real. Like that's how they control everybody and make everyone think it's a consensus. It's just astroturfing. They need 30% of it. You know, they suppress so many profiles. They suppress so many profiles with shadow banning that they need a voice to fill it all in. And they use that through control. They use all these other voices to fill in. So when you look in, you know, the reason it's so negative all the time is because it's just all these voices constantly saying this is reality. So when you look up, you're noticing all of public consensus is this way. But if you think about the people in your own life, nobody thinks the same way. If you think about when you walk around, nobody thinks the same way. Everyone has a different opinion, but that's not online. Everyone thinks the same way online. That's all those fake accounts, right? So when he said that, all of a sudden he had all one way of thinking coming back at him, right? And amazingly enough, they were all like, how dare you speak this way? Well, that's a communist way of thinking. Like when you go to communist China, like there was a girl here, she had come here and said, I love breathing the free air. And communist China came down on her and they nailed her for it. And they were like, how dare you say our air isn't clean? And all of China had this huge thing of like, how dare you speak that way? That's why I say when you watch China Uncensored, you will realize how much we are just like them, like how much they own everything through astroturfing, how much they're a propaganda machine. And China Uncensored has actually covered that. They've actually done episodes where they talk about how China propaganda, they actually have meetings every year where they talk about how they're working within our media to convert us to communism. And I'm like, well done. Because now I'm finding out that my viewers and my followers are trying to get married because they weren't, because they were scared to, because their family members getting angry at them. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? Wait a minute, what? Like, that's what happens in China. Like, you're scared to have kids? You're not having kids out of fear of what those around you would say? That's China. That's China who will hurt you and throw you in jail for having children. They're the ones who regulate how many you have. And when your own families are doing that, well, welcome, your family is a communist regime. That means their propaganda machine is working well within your family and your community. So that's a high time that, hey, you're living with the communist machine, just take my husband and I's little thing that we did and we just left. We got on our little Plymouth boat and we sailed across the little ocean and we left. And we got ourselves our own land of the free at home somewhere else. And we are happy and we are free and we have our own friends and we made our own community, right? That's when your time, like, that's time to leave little China and get out and get your own dang family and go have kids and live free because you're supposed to be living in America, the land of the free. So anyway, Jonathan Van Ness is totally living free. And so he said that he got a bunch of hate. And the next day he just got on Twitter and he did this little video and he was like, he said this amazing video that like totally made me cry. And he said, I just feel like we're being played by the media. Like, yeah, there's extreme left and there's extreme right and there's people who hate on both sides. He's like, but like we forgetting the compromise that got us here. And I was like, yeah. And it was like, yeah. And what does he mean by here? Like there's an acknowledgement that here is like your daily life where you can walk around on streets and have a civic agreement that you'll stop at the red lights, that you will check in at a counter, that you'll stay in a line, that you'll have transactions, that you can choose what company you want to work for. You can choose what position you want to be in. You can choose what job you want to be. You can be whoever you want to be in life. That's how we got here. And all of that's under threat if we choose to be communist. And it was compromise that got us here. And he's right. And he was going to a gym in Kansas. And I'm just like, if a gay man can live in Kansas, like, does that tell you? Like, if you listen to the extreme rhetoric of the communists, like, that's an impossible feat. BS. Like, no. I told you in a video a long time ago, I said churches aren't like that anymore. Like, churches aren't like that anymore. Churches, like, have Bible studies and any kind of couple can join, you know, and they're drinking wine and everything and stuff like that, which, you know, every church is different, but it's not like, you know, the Footloose type of churches where they're putting a branded X on you. You know, it's not Puritan. It's not like the Puritan days of the 1600s. And I'm just kind of like, what? Like, only, you know, gay people are allowed to get married now? Is that what we're telling people? Is that what we're telling young people? Like, yay, if you're gay, get married. But if you're not, it's over? And then the other one that we're watching is like Tommy Sotomayor. All right, so neither is a Christian. All right, but still they're completely different. Tommy Sotomayor is a black guy. He's working in the black community and he's saying totally radical things. You know, getting death threats all the time. Maybe Jonathan is now too. You know, but they're totally different people, you know, like totally different people. And I was just sitting there going, I don't think we're crazy. I know you guys do the same things. I know that you guys sit there, and I think that's the United States of America. United States of America, we sit there. I know you sit there at home on your home personal computers, and I know that you watch when it's made available to you. I know you watch the gamut. I know you do. I know you watch everyone. And that's the difference between us and every other culture. That is the West. That's the West. That's the West. That's the West. We see the good and the value, and we enjoy the range. And we don't think of it as a range. We just think of it as people. But you cannot go into Iraq and do that. You can't. You'll be slaughtered. You cannot go into India and do that. You cannot go into China and do that. You can't go into South Africa and do that. You can't go into Africa and do that. You can't go on to another continent and do that. You can't go into Russia and do that. Do you understand why they hate us so much? They hate us so much because we sit on our computers and enjoy each other. We enjoy each other. And that's why we're doing Clean the GOP. Because maybe the politicians think it's worth it to accept some money like frickin' Benedict Arnold and let our blood flow on the streets. Just because they don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't run like the angel parents' kids down the streets, on and on and on. And just because the Democrats don't accept the blood money and let the streets of Chicago soak as they pass gun restriction law after gun restriction law so that Chicago is the most gun restricted place, as is Venezuela, and the blood just runs. Just because the Benedict Arnolds of today look different doesn't mean that there isn't a way to root them out, and that's by voting. So we're cleaning the GOP. And if you haven't seen that video, I think I linked it already. It'll be linked at the end of this video. But I invite you to join with us in the primaries, and they are really trying to bury the primary vote. They are really trying to do it. And I really encourage you to start watching out for Agenda 21, because the number one thing they are doing with all the Twitter hashtags and with all the mainstream media, the number one thing they don't want you looking at is your local city government. The number one thing they don't want you looking at is your city council and your school board. You know why? Because this is what they're doing to your school kids. They're grooming your kids with books that teach your kids how to masturbate at the age of 11. And you think that's insanity? Why don't you listen to the teachers tell you about it? And that's dictators, because that's what happens in other countries. And they're too busy paying our media to tell us that the problem is us. They're too busy setting pastors from other countries to tell our churches that we are the problem. And so our kids really believe it. And you sit there listening to Lunel say that we're the problem and America, and she doesn't want to talk to a white person. She won't even accept a question unless she knows the color of the person. And I haven't heard talk like that since I was a little girl, and it was a white person that wanted to know the color because she wouldn't dare to listen. I remember the books. I remember the books they had us read when I was a little child, and I remember them talking about the South, and that is exactly the way the white woman spoke of the blacks that were in slavery. They wanted to know, had a black person actually touched this? Because they wouldn't dare touch it. And now you see that same exact sneer. I won't answer that question. Has it been touched by a white person? I won't even. White people. Ugh. Man, they've done a number on us. Because the one thing they've done, where the blood is running the worst, is they've told them, hey, don't leave. You're a sellout. You know where safety is? Where the police will actually protect you, where you won't get shot walking home on the street, where people won't stab you in the back. You're a sellout if you go there. Yeah, the Benedict Arnolds of today look really, really, really different. Charm is the name of the game. The name of the game. But there's a big difference between charm and joy. And there's so much joy on that full 90% spectrum. There's so much joy. And joy doesn't have a color. And when someone tells you it does, you better watch out who they're working for. Because if you follow the money, it's most likely a billionaire Jewish white man. And if you trace his family back, they ran the slave ships. There's hope. But the hope comes in unity. And the thing is that we already have it. Because every night and every day, you sit on your computer and you watch people of every age, race, and nation. And you enjoy them all because you're a Westerner. You're a Westerner, which makes you different from every other culture. And when you see someone that says the West is so darn evil, here's the thing that no one tells you. They haven't been anywhere else. They haven't had the luxury of traveling to Iraq. They haven't had the luxury of traveling in China. They haven't even bothered to watch China Uncensored. They haven't given themselves the luxury of watching the organs being ripped from the bowels of the fallen gone in China. They have no clue what the world would be like under China's rule, which we are on the tipping of scales of. And so when they say the West needs to fall, or America is so awful, or that white men are the problem, when it is all of us trying to work together to try and keep freedom alive in the world. Because I'm looking around the world, and you're right, there is no other country. There's no other country that has freedom and rights for all except for white countries. You're right. So when you say it's the white men who have the problem, you make all the countries with death camps and concentration camps so happy. So happy. So you just ask them, when's the last time you've been to China? When's the last time you've been to Taiwan? When's the last time you've been to India? When's the last time you've actually been to Kenya? Because, yeah, you're right, the Clinton Foundation's pretty damn bad. Pretty damn bad. But if you just say white men, you eliminate every country that says freedom for all. What foundation will any of us stand on then? Any of us? It's ideas that are hateful. It's not color. It's laws that are hateful, not color. Hate the idea. Hate the religions. Hate the thought. Hate the mindset. Hate tyranny against the mind of man. And you know who said that? It was a white man. Go to your city councils. Run for office with the knowledge and freedom of knowing that you don't have to decide whether or not that you're racist. You don't have to decide whether or not you're a liberal or a conservative or anything. You already know that you are an American because every night you sit on your computer and you're filled with love because you watch everyone. It's the ones who refuse to watch anyone but this. Those are the ones with hate in their heart. And we can let them be. It's our actions we're responsible for. Ours. We're powerful on our own. Like that video of Agenda 21. One guy got up and he asked a question and it changed the entire room. The entire room, because no one knew what he knew. One voice. from Jonathan Van Ness to Tommy Sotomayor and everyone outside of them and in between. We have a lot more in common than we have different when you start to look outside of the world of the U.S. And maybe we need to do that more often. Maybe we need to start looking outside of the U.S. to realize how much we have in common first. And maybe when you talk to others who are filled with hate, maybe you should just ask them how much they know about the world outside. And if it's not much, then there's not much to talk about, is there? And you can move on to the next debate. I'm Book of Katherine, and I'm filled with hope for our future because we're waking up and we're taking it to the voting booth. And we're going to win because we're running, and it's not going to stop this time and this year. It's going to keep going until we clean them all the heck out. Every traitor, every Benedict Arnold who's willing to trade money for our blood. Peace out. You can see it clean the GOP right here, and then I'll attach something really good right here. I have to go to a doctor's appointment. I'll see you guys later. Bye.